I trust my wife like I trust a politician with my browser history. Which is to say, not at all. But after 12 years of marriage, you learn to pick your battles. Some hills aren't worth dying on. Some lies are too comfortable to disturb. Until tonight. Girls' night again? I asked, watching Jenna apply her third coat of mascara in our bedroom mirror. She was dressed to kill, tight black dress I'd never seen before, heels that could puncture steel, and enough perfume to fog up our Honda. Just the usual crew, she said without looking at me. Melissa, Tracy, Emily, we're hitting that new wine bar downtown. The usual crew. Right, the same 3 married women who'd been mysteriously single every Friday for the past 6 months. The same friends who giggled like teenagers whenever I walked into a room, then went dead silent. Which wine bar? I asked, pretending to scroll through my phone. Oh, you wouldn't know it. It's called Vintage something, very upscale. Jenna Deacon, my beloved wife of 12 years, mother of our 10-year-old daughter Sophie, and apparently the world's worst liar. There was no wine bar called Vintage anything downtown. I'd checked last week when she gave me the same story. Have fun, I said, kissing her cheek. She smelled like guilt and expensive perfume. Don't wait up, honey. You know how us girls get when we start talking. Oh, I knew exactly how they got. After she left, I sat in my home office staring at the computer screen, pretending to work on a client's database migration. But my mind was elsewhere, replaying the past few months of Friday nights. Jenna coming home at 2 a.m., slightly drunk, clothes wrinkled, phone face down on the nightstand. Her sudden interest in yoga classes, new lingerie, and conversations that stopped the moment I entered the room. My phone buzzed. A text from my buddy Joe Martinez, my only real friend since moving to this suburban nightmare 5 years ago. Beer tonight? Sarah's got book club. I stared at the message for a long moment. Joe's wife Sarah was allegedly at book club every Friday. Same night as Jenna's girls' night. Same night as Melissa's wine tasting. Same night as Tracy's pottery class and Emily's volunteer work. What were the odds? Actually, I texted back, want to do something different tonight? Maybe check out the nightlife downtown? Since when do you want to go clubbing, Mark? Since I realized my wife might be living a double life. My phone rang immediately. Dude, what are you talking about? Joe's voice was concerned but curious. Meet me at Murphy's Pub in 20 minutes. Bring your car. We're going on a little reconnaissance mission. Are you serious? Dead serious. And Joe? If anyone asks, we were never there. I hung up and grabbed my jacket. For the first time in months, I felt alive. Scared, angry, and probably about to destroy my marriage. But alive. Murphy's Pub was our usual hangout. A dive bar 3 blocks from my house where the beer was cheap and the bartender minded his own business. Joe was already there when I arrived, nursing a Budweiser and looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. This is insane, he said as I sat down. You're talking about following your wife. I'm talking about finding out the truth. I ordered a beer and pulled out my phone. Look at this. I showed him Jenna's Instagram from earlier that day, a photo of her lunch salad with the caption, "Fueling up for girls' night. Wine and gossip incoming." So? Look at the comments. He scrolled down. Melissa had commented, "Can't wait to see who wins tonight," with a winking emoji. Tracy had added, "Game on, ladies." Emily's comment was more subtle. "May the best woman win." What kind of wine tasting has winners? I asked. Joe stared at the screen. Maybe it's like a trivia thing. Or maybe it's not a wine tasting at all. I pulled up another screenshot, a group chat I'd glimpsed on Jenna's iPad last week before she quickly closed it. I'd managed to photograph part of it with my phone. Tracy, Indigo Lounge tonight. I hear the hunting is good there. Melissa, perfect. New territory, fresh meat. Jenna, I'm in. Mark will never suspect a thing. Joe's face went pale. Holy shit, Mark. Yeah, holy shit. I finished my beer in one gulp. So you still think I'm paranoid? He was quiet for a long moment, staring at the messages. What do you want to do? I want to know what they're really doing, and I want proof. This could blow up in your face. It's already blown up. I'm just trying to find the pieces. Joe sighed and pulled out his car keys. My Camry's parked outside. It's more inconspicuous than your Honda. Why? Because if we're doing this, we're doing it right. And because Sarah's been acting weird lately, too. Maybe it's time I found out why. We left Murphy's at 9:30 p.m. and drove downtown in Joe's gray Toyota Camry, the automotive equivalent of beige wallpaper, perfect for surveillance. There, I said, pointing to a neon sign 3 blocks ahead. Indigo Lounge. It wasn't a wine bar. It was a high-end nightclub with a line of 20-somethings wrapped around the block and a valet parking Porsches and BMWs. The kind of place where drinks cost $20 and everyone looked like they'd stepped out of a magazine. "Your wife hangs out here?" Joe asked, incredulous. "Apparently so." We parked across the street and waited. At 10:15, a black Mercedes SUV pulled up to the valet stand. 4 women got out, laughing and stumbling slightly in their heels. Jenna, Melissa, Tracy, and Emily, the girls' night crew. But they weren't alone. 2 men emerged from the SUV behind them. One was tall and lean in an expensive suit, the other shorter but built like he spent his life in a gym. Both wore wedding rings, which they promptly removed and pocketed as they approached the club entrance. "Are you getting this?" Joe whispered. I was already recording on my phone, zoomed in on the group. The tall man had his hand on Jenna's lower back as they walked to the door. The shorter one was whispering something in Melissa's ear that made her throw her head back and laugh. "We need to get closer," I said. "We need to get the hell out of here before they see us." But I was already getting out of the car. "Stay here. Keep the engine running." "Mark, don't—" I crossed the street and walked toward the club, staying in the shadows between parked cars. The doorman was distracted by a group of college girls arguing about the cover charge. I slipped past and positioned myself near a pillar where I could see the entrance clearly. My phone buzzed with a text from Jenna. "Wine bar is so fun. Melissa is already tipsy. Love you." I screenshot the message and checked the timestamp. 10:22 p.m. She'd sent it while walking into a nightclub with a man who wasn't her husband. The lies were so casual, so automatic. How long had this been going on? I was about to head back to Joe's car when I heard familiar laughter from inside the club. Through the open doors, I could see Jenna and her friends at a high-top table near the bar. The 2 men were with them, and they'd been joined by a third, a guy in his 40s with silver hair and a Rolex that caught the light every time he lifted his drink. I moved closer, pretending to check my phone while actually recording. The music was loud, but I caught fragments of conversation. Told him I was at book club. That was Emily, giggling. "Doesn't suspect a thing." Melissa's voice slurred already. "Poor bastard thinks I'm learning pottery." Tracy, raising her martini in a mock toast. And then Jenna's voice, clear as a bell. "The key is making them feel secure. Mark actually thanked me for having such good friends. If only he knew what kind of friends we really are." The group erupted in laughter. The silver-haired man leaned over and whispered something in Jenna's ear. She blushed and nodded. I felt like I was going to throw up. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Joe. "Security guard heading your way. Move." I looked up and saw a massive bouncer scanning the entrance area. I backed away slowly, then turned and walked quickly toward the street. By the time I reached Joe's car, my hands were shaking. "Did you get what you needed?" he asked as I climbed in. "More than I wanted." I showed him the recordings. We sat in silence, watching my wife flirt with a stranger while lying to me via text message. "What now?" Joe asked finally. "Now we wait, and we plan." "Plan what?" I looked back at the club where my wife was living a secret life that made a mockery of everything I thought I knew about her. "Revenge," I said. Creative, devastating, completely legal revenge. Joe started the engine. "I'm in." As we drove away, I couldn't stop thinking about Jenna's laugh, the way she'd thrown her head back when the silver-haired man whispered in her ear. It was the same laugh she used to give me back when we were dating, back when I thought I was the only man who could make her feel that way. How naive I'd been. But naivety was a luxury I could no longer afford. It was time to get educated. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. The next morning, Jenna came down to breakfast looking like she'd been hit by a truck. Her makeup was smeared, her hair was a mess, and she moved like every step caused her pain. "Rough night?" I asked, not looking up from my coffee. "You could say that." She poured herself orange juice with shaking hands. "Melissa had a little too much wine. We ended up taking care of her until almost 3 a.m. Another lie, delivered with the practiced ease of a politician. I'd watched them leave the club at 1:15 a.m., stumbling toward a hotel across the street. The silver-haired man had his arm around Jenna's waist. Melissa was making out with the shorter guy against a lamppost. "That's what friends are for," I said. "Exactly." She kissed the top of my head. "I'm going to shower and then take Sophie shopping. We'll be back this afternoon." After they left, I called Joe. "I've been thinking about last night," he said without preamble. "We need more evidence." "Agreed, but we also need to be smart about this. One night of footage isn't enough. What do you have in mind? Research. I want to know everything about those men. Names, occupations, addresses, family status, everything. How? Leave that to me. I'm an IT consultant, remember? I have skills. It took me 3 hours and several legally questionable database searches, but I found them. The silver-haired man was Alex Carter, 43, hedge fund manager, married to Samantha Carter for 18 years, father of 2 teenage daughters. The shorter guy was Ryan Walsh, 39, real estate developer, married to Linda Walsh for 12 years, 1 son. Both lived in the same upscale neighborhood as Melissa and Tracy. Both had social media profiles full of happy family photos and inspirational quotes about loyalty and integrity. Both were lying cheaters, just like my wife. I dug deeper. Alex Carter's hedge fund had been investigated by the SEC 2 years ago for suspicious trading practices. Nothing stuck, but the investigation was public record. Ryan Walsh's development company had been sued 3 times for breach of contract and once for environmental violations. These weren't just cheaters. They were predators who thought they were untouchable. My phone rang. Joe. Sarah just left for another book club, he said. Want to do some more reconnaissance? Actually, I have a better idea. Meet me at Murphy's in an hour, and bring a notebook. When Joe arrived, I had 3 manila folders spread across our usual table. Each contained printed photos, financial records, and social media screenshots. Jesus, Mark, how did you get all this? The internet is a beautiful thing when you know where to look. I opened Alex Carter's folder. Meet the enemy. I walked him through everything I'd found. Alex's affairs weren't new. I'd discovered at least 2 other women he'd been photographed with over the past year. Ryan had a gambling problem and owed money to several casinos. Both men frequented high-end clubs and hotels, always with different women, always while their wives thought they were working late. They're professionals, Joe said, studying the photos. This isn't random cheating, it's systematic. Exactly. And our wives aren't victims, they're participants. I showed him the group chat screenshots I'd managed to capture from Jenna's iPad that morning while she was in the shower. Tracy. New game tonight. First one to get a phone number wins. Emily. What's the prize? Melissa. Loser buys drinks next week. Jenna. You're all going down. I've got my eye on that silver fox from last Friday. Joe stared at the messages. They're treating it like a sport. It gets worse. I pulled out another screenshot. Look at this one from 3 weeks ago. Jenna. Mark bought me flowers yesterday. So sweet and clueless. Tracy. Greg's the same way. He actually thanked me for my pottery hobby. Melissa. These idiots make it so easy. Todd thinks I'm learning wine appreciation. Emily. Sometimes I feel bad about lying to Ben. Jenna. Don't. They're happier not knowing. We're doing them a favor. Joe's face was red with anger. Sarah's been lying about book club for 6 months. 6 fucking months. How do you want to handle this? I want to destroy them. All of them. Good, because I have a plan. I pulled out a legal pad covered with notes and diagrams. Phase 1, gather more evidence. We need video of them with these guys, not just entering clubs. We need proof of the lies, the mockery, everything. Phase 2, we expose them, but not privately, not quietly. We make it public, humiliating, and permanent. How? Social media. Their friends, their families, their coworkers, everyone they have been lying to. Joe was nodding slowly. What about the guys, Alex and Ryan? They get special treatment. I'm going to make sure their wives know exactly what kind of men they married. And Phase 3? I smiled for the first time in days. Phase 3 is where we get creative. Over the next 2 weeks, Joe and I became part-time private investigators. We followed our wives every Friday night, documenting their lies with military precision. We discovered they weren't just meeting Alex and Ryan. There was a whole network of married cheaters who rotated through different clubs and hotels. The evidence was overwhelming. Photos of Jenna kissing Alex in hotel parking lots, videos of Sarah grinding against strangers on dance floors, audio recordings of all 4 women mocking their husbands and comparing notes on their affairs. But the worst part wasn't the cheating, it was the cruelty. Mark's so pathetic, Jenna had said during one recorded conversation. He actually asked if I wanted to go to marriage counseling last month. I told him we were fine, and he believed me. At least Mark tries, Tracy had replied. Greg just sits in his chair watching sports. Sometimes I wonder why I don't just leave him. Because then you'd have to split your assets, Melissa had laughed. This way, you get the best of both worlds. They weren't just cheating on us. They were systematically destroying our marriages while pretending to be loving wives. They were stealing our money, our time, our trust, and our dignity. But they'd made one crucial mistake. They'd underestimated us. On a rainy Thursday evening, I met with the other husbands for the first time. Todd Martinez, Melissa's husband, Greg Thompson, Tracy's husband, and Ben Williams, Emily's husband. Joe had helped me track them down and convince them to meet. We gathered at a 24-hour diner on the outskirts of town, far from anywhere our wives might go. I'd brought copies of everything: photos, videos, chat screenshots, financial records showing unexplained expenses. Todd was in denial at first. Melissa wouldn't do this. She loves me. Look at the evidence, I said gently, sliding a folder across the table. Greg was furious but unsurprised. I knew that bitch was lying about pottery class. She doesn't have a creative bone in her body. Ben just sat quietly, staring at photos of his wife making out with a stranger. How long? He asked finally. At least 6 months. Probably longer. What do you want from us? Todd asked, his voice hollow. I want justice. Not revenge. Justice. They've been lying to us, stealing from us, humiliating us behind our backs. They think we're too stupid and weak to fight back. What did you have in mind? Greg asked. I pulled out my legal pad and spread it across the table. Gentlemen, let me tell you about the most devastating public humiliation in suburban history. The plan was simple but brilliant. In 3 days, our neighborhood was hosting its annual block party, a massive barbecue in the park where everyone would be present: wives, kids, neighbors, extended family, the perfect audience. I'd volunteered to handle the sound system, which gave me access to the microphones and speakers. At the peak of the party, when everyone was gathered around the main pavilion, I would play selected audio recordings of our wives discussing their affairs. But that was just the opening act. Greg would simultaneously post the photos and videos to a private Facebook group that included all the neighbors, then make it public. Ben would email the evidence to our wives' employers. Todd would send everything to their parents and siblings. And Joe would live stream the whole thing on Instagram, ensuring maximum reach and permanent documentation. What about the guys they're cheating with? Ben asked. Leave them to me, I said. I have special plans for Alex and Ryan. This will destroy our marriages, Todd said quietly. Our marriages are already destroyed, I replied. We're just making it official. Greg raised his coffee cup. To justice. To justice, we all repeated. As we left the diner that night, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Hope. Not for my marriage. That was over. But hope that maybe, just maybe, action still had consequences. That lie still mattered. That betrayal still hurt the betrayer as much as the betrayed. In 3 days, everyone would know the truth about our perfect suburban wives and their secret lives. I could hardly wait. Saturday morning arrived gray and drizzly, but the weather forecast promised clearing skies by afternoon. Perfect for the neighborhood block party. Perfect for justice. I was in my garage at 6 a.m., testing the sound equipment one final time. The speakers were powerful enough to reach every corner of Riverside Park. The wireless microphones had fresh batteries. The audio files were loaded and ready to play. Jenna found me there an hour later, coffee in hand and wearing her World's Greatest Mom t-shirt. The irony wasn't lost on me. You're up early, she said, kissing my cheek. Nervous about the sound system? Just want everything to be perfect, I replied, not looking at her. It will be. You always handle these things so well. She squeezed my shoulder. I'm proud of you, honey. The casual affection, delivered while planning another night of betrayal, made my stomach turn. But I smiled and nodded, playing the role of the devoted husband one last time. What time are you meeting the girls tonight? I asked. Around 8. We're trying that new sushi place downtown. Another lie. I knew they were meeting Alex and Ryan at a hotel bar across town. I had their reservation confirmation. Alex had stupidly used his corporate credit card. Have fun, I said. You deserve a night out with your friends. After she left, I made final preparations. Joe arrived at noon with Todd, Greg, and Ben. We loaded the equipment into my truck and drove to the park in silence, each lost in our own thoughts about what we were about to do. The setup took 2 hours, speakers positioned around the pavilion, microphones tested, audio files queued and ready. To anyone watching, we looked like a group of dedicated neighbors preparing for a community event, which in a way, we were. By 3 p.m., the park was filling with families. Kids ran between picnic tables while parents set up folding chairs and unpacked coolers. The smell of barbecue filled the air. It looked like a Norman Rockwell painting of American suburban life. If only they knew what was coming. Jenna arrived at 4 p.m. with Sophie, carrying a tray of her famous brownies. She looked beautiful in her sundress and sandals, every inch the perfect wife and mother. Several neighbors complimented her on the brownies, her dress, her hair. She smiled and laughed, accepting praise while planning her evening of adultery. "Great job with the sound system, honey," she said, wrapping her arms around me from behind. "You can hear the music perfectly from anywhere in the park." "Thanks," I said. I wanted to make sure everyone could hear everything clearly. At 6 p.m., Mayor Davidson took the microphone to welcome everyone and thank the volunteers. I stood nearby, my finger hovering over the audio controls on my phone. Around the park, Joe, Todd, Greg, and Ben were positioned with their phones ready. "Before we begin the evening's festivities," the mayor continued, "I'd like to recognize some of our outstanding community volunteers." He called out names, including Jenna's for her work with the school fundraiser. She stood and waved, beaming with pride. The crowd applauded. It was time. I pressed play. The first audio clip began softly, almost indistinguishable from background noise. But as people realized what they were hearing, conversations stopped. Heads turned toward the speakers. "Mark's so pathetic. He actually asked if I wanted to go to marriage counseling." Jenna's voice, crystal clear through the park's sound system. Her face went white as she recognized her own words. "At least Mark tries. Greg just sits in his chair watching sports." Tracy's voice now. I saw her near the food table, frantically looking around for the source of the audio. "This way, you get the best of both worlds." Melissa's laugh echoed across the park. She was standing with a group of neighbors who were now staring at her with confusion and dawning understanding. The audio continued. 5 minutes of their cruelest comments about their husbands, their mockery of our trust, their casual discussion of their affairs. By the end, you could hear a pin drop in the park. Then came the photos. Greg had posted them to the neighborhood Facebook group at exactly 6:15 p.m. Within seconds, phones were buzzing throughout the park as people received notifications. Photos of our wives kissing strangers, videos of them grinding against other men on dance floors, screenshots of their group chat discussing their game. The reaction was swift and devastating. Mrs. Henderson, the elderly woman who lived next door to Jenna and me, stood up from her folding chair and pointed directly at my wife. "You should be ashamed of yourself," she said, her voice carrying across the silent park. "That poor man has done nothing but love you." Other voices joined in, men shaking their heads in disgust, women whispering behind their hands, teenagers recording everything on their phones. Jenna tried to approach me, tears streaming down her face. "Mark, please, I can explain." "Explain what?" I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Explain how you've been lying to me for months. Explain how you and your friends turned cheating into a game. Explain how you mock me behind my back while I work 60-hour weeks to pay for your lifestyle." The crowd murmured approval. Someone started clapping. Others joined in. "This isn't what it looks like," Melissa said, her voice shrill with panic. "Really?" Greg stepped forward, holding up his phone. "Because I have video of you making out with a stranger last Friday night while I was home with our kids." Todd was showing his phone to anyone who would look. 18 years of marriage, he said, his voice breaking. 18 years, and she's been treating it like a joke. Ben hadn't said a word, but he was live streaming everything on Instagram. The viewer count was climbing rapidly. 200, 500, 800 people watching our wives' public humiliation in real time. Emily tried to grab his phone. Ben, stop this. You're embarrassing our children." "I'm embarrassing our children?" he said, finally finding his voice. "You're the one who's been sneaking around with married men while lying about volunteer work." The confrontation escalated quickly. Tracy screamed at Greg, calling him jealous and controlling. Melissa accused Todd of being boring and neglectful. Emily claimed Ben was invading her privacy. But Jenna just stood there, staring at me with a mixture of shock and something that might have been respect. "How long have you known?" she asked quietly. "Long enough," I replied. "Long enough to document everything. Long enough to contact Alex's wife and Ryan's wife. Long enough to send copies of your group chat to your boss at the PR firm." Her face went even paler. "You didn't." "I did. Along with photos of you entering hotels with married men. I imagine Monday morning is going to be very interesting for you." The crowd was dispersing now, families gathering their things and leaving in uncomfortable silence. But many lingered, watching the drama unfold with the fascination of people witnessing a car crash. Sophie, my 10-year-old daughter, appeared at my side. She'd been playing with friends and had missed most of the confrontation, but she could sense the tension. "Daddy, what's happening? Why is everyone upset?" I knelt down to her level. "Sometimes adults make bad choices, sweetheart, and sometimes those choices have consequences." "Is Mommy in trouble?" "Yes, honey, Mommy is in trouble." Jenna tried to approach Sophie, but I stepped between them. "Don't," I said firmly. "You've done enough damage for one day." She's my daughter, too," Jenna protested. "Then you should have thought about that before you decided to betray her family." By 8 p.m., the park was nearly empty. The other wives had fled with their husbands in pursuit, still arguing. Joe was uploading the live stream to YouTube and TikTok, ensuring permanent documentation. The evidence was spreading across social media faster than we could track it. Jenna and I were alone except for Sophie, who was playing on the swings, oblivious to the destruction of her parents' marriage. "What happens now?" Jenna asked. "Now you face the consequences of your choices," I said. "Your employer will probably fire you. Your friends and family will know what you really are. Your daughter will grow up knowing her mother chose strangers over her family." "And us?" "There is no us. There hasn't been for months. You just didn't bother to tell me." She started crying again, but I felt nothing. No sympathy, no regret, no second thoughts, just a cold satisfaction that the truth was finally out. "I never meant for it to go this far," she whispered. "Yes, you did. You meant every lie, every betrayal, every cruel comment about the man who loved you. You just never thought you'd get caught." My phone buzzed with a text from Alex's wife, Samantha. "Thank you for opening my eyes. The divorce papers will be filed Monday." Another text, this one from Ryan's wife, Linda. "I'm taking the kids to my mother's. Ryan can explain to his son why Daddy doesn't live here anymore." The dominoes were falling exactly as planned. "I'll be staying at my sister's tonight," Jenna said finally. "We can talk about arrangements tomorrow." "There's nothing to talk about. I've already contacted a lawyer. You'll be served with papers on Monday." She nodded, defeated. "Can I at least say goodbye to Sophie?" I looked at my daughter, still swinging in the gathering dusk, and felt my heart break for her. She didn't deserve this. She didn't ask for parents who would destroy her family with their selfishness and pride. 5 minutes, I said. Jenna walked to the swings and knelt beside Sophie. I couldn't hear what she said, but I saw my daughter's face crumple with confusion and sadness. When Jenna kissed her goodbye, Sophie clung to her for a long moment. Then Jenna walked away, leaving her family behind just as she'd been doing emotionally for months. Sophie ran to me, tears streaming down her face. "Daddy, is Mommy coming home?" "Not tonight, sweetheart. Maybe not for a while." "Did I do something wrong?" "No, baby, you didn't do anything wrong. Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes that hurt the people they love, but that's not your fault, and it's not mine either." As we walked to the car, Sophie's hand in mine, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Peace, not happiness. That would take time, but peace. The lies were over. The betrayal was exposed. The consequences were real and immediate. Justice, it turned out, was better than revenge. And it was only the beginning. Monday morning brought a symphony of consequences. I was in my home office, pretending to work while actually monitoring the fallout from Saturday's revelations, when my phone started ringing at 8:47 a.m. First call, Jenna's sister Rebecca, screaming about how I'd humiliated the family. Second call, my mother-in-law, demanding I fix this mess and take Jenna back. Third call, Jenna's boss at Morrison & Associates PR firm, asking if I had additional documentation of my wife's unprofessional conduct. I answered that one. "Mr. Patterson, this is Mark Deacon. Yes, I have extensive documentation. I can email everything within the hour." "That would be appreciated. Mrs. Deacon's behavior reflects poorly on our firm's reputation. We'll need to discuss her employment status." Fourth call. Joe, laughing so hard he could barely speak. "Dude, have you seen the numbers? The Instagram live stream has 50,000 views. The Facebook post has been shared 800 times. We're fucking viral." "Any word from Sarah?" "She's staying at her mother's. Filed for separation this morning. Her book club friends are pretending they never knew her." Fifth call. Unknown number. "Is this Mark Deacon?" A woman's voice, nervous but determined. "Yes." "This is Samantha Carter, Alex's wife. We need to talk." An hour later, I was sitting in a Starbucks across town with Samantha Carter and Linda Walsh, the wives of Alex and Ryan. Both women looked like they hadn't slept in days. Both were carrying manila folders thick with legal documents. "How long did you know?" Samantha asked without preamble. "About 2 weeks of solid evidence. Suspicions for months." "We should have known, too," Linda said bitterly. "The signs were all there. Late nights, mysterious expenses, new clothes, sudden interest in fitness." I pulled out my phone and showed them the photos I'd taken outside Indigo Lounge. "Your husbands are professionals at this. They've been running this operation for at least a year, probably longer." Samantha studied a photo of Alex with his hand on Jenna's ass. "He told me he was working late on the Henderson account." Ryan said he was showing properties to out-of-town clients, Linda added. I actually felt sorry for him, working such long hours. There's more, I said, pulling out printed copies of financial records. Alex has been using his corporate card to pay for hotels. Ryan's been claiming the expenses as business entertainment. They're not just cheating, they're committing fraud. Both women leaned forward, suddenly very interested. How much fraud? Samantha asked. Conservatively? Alex has charged about $15,000 in personal expenses to his company over the past 6 months. Ryan's closer to $12,000. Linda smiled for the first time since I'd met her. Ryan's company has a zero-tolerance policy for expense fraud. Automatic termination. Alex's hedge fund is already under SEC scrutiny, Samantha added. This could trigger a full audit. I slid copies of the financial records across the table. Consider these a divorce gift. What about your wife? Linda asked. What about her? Are you going to take her back? Try counseling? I laughed, surprising myself with how bitter it sounded. She spent Saturday night at a hotel with your husband while her daughter cried herself to sleep wondering why Mommy wasn't coming home. What do you think? Samantha nodded approvingly. Good. Weak men who take back cheaters just enable more cheating. Speaking of which, Linda said, we have something for you. She pulled out her phone and showed me a video. It was security footage from the Marriott downtown, time-stamped Saturday night at 11:23 p.m. Alex, Ryan, Jenna, and Melissa were stumbling through the lobby toward the elevators. Jenna was hanging on Alex's arm, laughing at something he'd whispered in her ear. How did you get this? Linda's brother manages the hotel, Samantha explained. He pulled the footage when we explained the situation. There's more, Linda said, swiping to another video. This one showed the same group leaving the hotel Sunday morning at 9:15 a.m. Jenna looked disheveled and was carrying her shoes. She told me she spent the night at her sister's, I said. Rebecca called looking for her at midnight, Samantha replied. Apparently Jenna never showed up. Another lie, another betrayal. At this point, I wasn't even surprised. What's your plan? I asked. Complete destruction, Linda said matter-of-factly. Ryan thinks he's untouchable because he makes good money and I'm a stay-at-home mom. He's about to learn otherwise. Alex is more vulnerable, Samantha added. His reputation is everything in finance. One whiff of scandal and his clients will flee. I'm not just taking half his assets, Linda continued. I'm taking his business, his reputation, and his relationship with our son. By the time I'm done, he'll be lucky to get supervised visitation. These women weren't victims anymore. They were warriors, and they were out for blood. Need any help? I asked. Actually, yes, Samantha said. We're planning a little surprise for tomorrow night. Interested? Tuesday evening, I found myself parked outside the Riverside Country Club in Joe's Camry, watching Alex and Ryan play their weekly tennis match. Both men looked relaxed and confident, apparently believing they'd weathered the storm. They were wrong. At 7:30 p.m., their wives arrived. Not together, but separately, each accompanied by a lawyer and a process server. Samantha had also brought a photographer and what looked like a private investigator. I watched through binoculars as the drama unfolded on the tennis court. Alex was serving when he spotted Samantha walking toward the court with her entourage. His serve sailed into the net. Alexander Carter, the process server called out, loud enough for everyone on the surrounding courts to hear. You're being served with divorce papers and a restraining order. Alex's face went white. Sam, what are you doing? We can talk about this. We're past talking, Samantha replied, her voice carrying across the court. Especially since you spent last weekend fucking your girlfriend while lying to our daughters about working late. The photographer was capturing everything. Other club members had stopped their games to watch. A small crowd was gathering. You're embarrassing yourself, Alex said, trying to regain control. I'm embarrassing myself? Samantha laughed. Alex, everyone here is about to know exactly what kind of man you are. She nodded to the private investigator, who began distributing printed photos to the crowd. The same photos I'd taken outside Indigo Lounge, plus new ones from the hotel security footage. Ryan tried to slip away, but Linda was waiting for him at the court exit. Going somewhere, honey? She asked sweetly. Linda, please, not here. Ryan Walsh, her process server announced. You're being served with divorce papers and a motion to freeze all marital assets. You can't do this. Actually, I can, especially when you've been using company funds to pay for hotel rooms with your mistresses. Did you really think I wouldn't find out? Ryan's lawyer stepped forward. Mr. Walsh, I'd advise you not to say anything else. Too late, Linda replied. He's already said plenty. We have recordings. She pulled out her phone and pressed play. Ryan's voice filled the air. Linda's such a boring housewife. She has no idea what she's missing. The crowd murmured disapprovingly. Several women shook their heads in disgust. That's taken out of context, Ryan protested. Really? What's the context for calling your wife a frigid bitch who doesn't deserve a real man? Linda played another recording. This one was Ryan describing in graphic detail what he wanted to do to that hot blonde, Jenna, while his fat wife was home with their son. The crowd's disapproval turned to open hostility. Someone started booing. Others joined in. Get out of here, an elderly man called out. This is a family club. We don't want your kind here, a woman added. Alex and Ryan tried to leave together, but they were surrounded by club members demanding answers, explanations, apologies. The photographer captured everything while the private investigator took notes. By 8 p.m., both men had been escorted off the property by club security. Their memberships would be revoked within 24 hours. How did it feel? I asked Samantha as we watched them drive away in separate cars. Like justice, she replied. But we're not done yet. Wednesday brought more consequences. Alex was fired from his hedge fund after the SEC opened a formal investigation into his expense reports. Ryan was terminated from his development company and faced possible criminal charges for fraud. But the real surprise came Thursday morning. I was having coffee in my kitchen when the doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw Emily Williams, the innocent member of Jenna's group. What do you want, Emily? Can I come in? I have something you need to see. Against my better judgment, I let her in. She looked terrible. Dark circles under her eyes, hair unwashed, clothes wrinkled like she'd slept in them. I'm sorry, she said immediately. I'm sorry for everything. The lying, the cheating, the things we said about you and the other husbands. Apology noted. Is that all? No. She pulled out her phone. I recorded everything. What do you mean, everything? Every conversation, every planning session, every cruel comment. I've been recording the group for months. I stared at her. Why? Insurance. I knew this would blow up eventually, and I wanted protection. I never meant to hurt Ben, but I got caught up in their game. She showed me her phone. Dozens of audio files, each labeled with dates and locations. Months of evidence I hadn't even known existed. There's more, she continued. Jenna and Melissa have been planning to leave their husbands for months. They were going to clean out your bank accounts and disappear with Alex and Ryan. What? They've been moving money into secret accounts. Jenna's been selling jewelry and transferring the cash. Melissa opened a credit card in Todd's name and maxed it out. Emily played an audio file from 3 weeks ago. Jenna's voice was clear. Mark is so trusting, he doesn't even check the bank statements. I could steal half our savings and he'd never notice. Melissa's laugh followed. Todd's the same way. Men are so stupid about money. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Because what we did was wrong. Because Ben doesn't deserve to have his life destroyed over my mistakes. And because Jenna and Melissa are planning to blame everything on you and Todd. Blame us for what? They're going to claim you were abusive husbands who drove them to cheat. They've been documenting fake evidence, staged photos of bruises, fake diary entries, manufactured text messages. Emily brought me screenshots of their group chat, proof that Jenna, Melissa, and Tracy had been plotting to fake domestic abuse claims to destroy us. I gathered my lawyer, the husbands, and the evidence. It wasn't just infidelity anymore. It was conspiracy and fraud. I told him to press charges on everyone except Emily, who cooperated. By Friday, the arrests made national news. Suburban wives' cheating ring exposed. Jenna, Melissa, and Tracy were in jail. Their lives, careers, and reputations were gone. My daughter Sophie asked if her mom was going to jail. I told her yes, and promised I'd never leave her. That night, I read messages from other victims thanking me. Justice had been served, but the satisfaction of revenge felt hollow. What mattered wasn't their punishment, it was protecting Sophie, and proving truth still mattered. Revenge hadn't healed me, but honesty had. Tomorrow, Sophie and I would start over. Not perfect, not easy, but real. The end. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next story. Write in the comments from which city you are watching.